Tadparam Bharyaya Vedmahe Jnanalingeshwaraya Dhimahi Tanno Guruhu Prachodayate Om Om Yoga Maharishi Dr. Swami Gita Ananda Giri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. We continue our exploration of Savitri pranayama, and as I was telling Ammaji yesterday, the most amazing part of all of this is how across the world people can come together, connect together, and even now the first two attendees are the brother sister Shrikant and ICYER from Canada, and then we have our Gargi from New Zealand. You know, I think this is wonderful that we can connect across continents, across the seas. And we even have Gitan from Sri Lanka, who's not missed any sessions to my knowledge. You know, this is one of the beauties. And I think we need to see what are the positive spin-offs, what are the learning outcomes that have come out of the present situation. It is very vital to have that attitude and perspective too. We were looking at the different talas. Okay, we have someone from Suriname also. That's amazing. And my dear, so many of my Indian yoga teachers and enthusiasts lining up. It's wonderful to have you all with me this morning. The different talas we have been looking at, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That basically at least 8 talas, if not more. And we have seen how the 2-1-2-1, which is the 1 tala, the 4-2-4-2, which is the 2 tala, and we have come up to yesterday 10-5-10-5, which is the 5 tala. And we have seen how 2-1 is just a manifestation of sort of the regular breathing. But 4-2 onwards, we have seen some very good benefits manifesting. Now, I think a small warning is required at this point. We must not do yoga for the benefits, because then it's not yoga anymore. And this is why many years ago, when I started doing all my DVDs, thanks to my most amazing Navin Daswani ji, and most of those are now on YouTube under the Gitanjali banner. We ended up making a lot of DVDs, and all these DVDs had yoga for diabetes, yoga for hypertension, yoga for pelvic health. You know, it was yoga for. Whenever I hear the word yoga for, because the moment you say yoga for something, it has already lost the yogic attribute of doing for the sake of doing, which is nishkama karma or nishkamya. According to the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, the Grand Master of Yoga, the Yogeshwar, tells us that action should be without attachment, because it is the attachment that leads to then the karmic fructification. So if you are not attached to your action, you are not bound to the karma. And I like to remind people that karma is something like a rubber band around your neck. Now that rubber band around your neck has a stone attached to it. And because I'm very compassionate and very nice person, unlike gangster yogi, what I do is that I give you the option of throwing that stone in any direction you want. Now remember, that stone is attached to a rubber band that is tied around your neck. It doesn't matter what direction you throw the stone, that stone is going to come back and smack you. The reason is that stone is attached to you. So it doesn't matter what direction you throw it, it's going to come back to you. And that is the whole trick about karma, as per the Bhagavad Gita, that if you are not attached to it, You don't have to worry about it coming back. Okay? So the key is non-attachment. Now, non-attachment does not mean non-caring, because the highest state of caring may be non-attachment. And that is why the highest state where you are not attached and you care so much that you are not attached anymore. Because attachment clouds our objectivity. It makes us very subjective. So coming back. So the moment you say yoga for something, you have already created attachment, which is the antithesis of yoga itself. And that is why nowadays I have sort of started reframing it, because how we express it in language is very, very important, because that is how we are communicating also with ourselves. So instead of saying yoga for diabetes, which also sounds like you do yoga, you get diabetes. Yoga for hypertension. You do yoga, you get hypertension, which is also another dangerous message being put out into the universe. I'm doing yoga for diabetes. And you get what I'm saying. One has to be careful. So what I nowadays like to do is that you turn it around a bit. It's a bit linguist, but that's the way you deal with yourself. And you say managing diabetes through yoga. Managing hypertension through yoga. So through yoga, yoga is just the means through which you are doing it. And you are not actually having any attachment or any expectation, because the sure short method for failure is expectation. And I have in the last few days experienced it even with these sessions, because I have been doing all of this for the past 4 weeks without any expectation. And I've enjoyed myself. I don't know whether you people have enjoyed, but I have enjoyed a lot. But then a couple of days ago, I started to have a few attachments. And that's where I started to have all my disappointments. The moment attachment came in, disappointment came. And that is the biggest danger we have. Attachment leads to disappointment. And that is why even this morning I was thinking about it, because I've had a tough night due to certain personal reasons. And I was like, do I have to do the morning session? Because the question comes in the mind, the chitta vritti, the subconscious says, what do I get out of it? People don't even respond to a request for feedback. And I'm like, why should you do it? And then I'm like, Ananda, you do it for the sake of doing, not expecting someone to give you feedback. You don't do it because you expect to be paid for it. You don't do it because of something. Because if you do it for something, you have already gone down the road of disappointment. Because it will never be enough. It will never be enough. And that is why it is so essential. So when we are talking about Savitri pranayama and these different rhythms, and Swamiji gives the effect and the ultimate results, please understand you must not be doing it for the sake of that, but this document exists, these teachings exist so that we know about it. It is for the sake of knowing, gnosis, jnana. So it is for the sake of jnana and not to create bondage to karma. So having said all of that in my big disclaimer, which has gone on for about 12 minutes, we have seen how 4-2, 6-3, 8-4 and 10-5 have different effects. And in short, Swamiji says a child could use a 2 tala, that is 4-2, an underdeveloped teenager, or somebody is emotional, a 3 count, that is a 6-3. For example, the 3 is for, what did he say? Yeah, the 2 tala, that is 4-2, helps for promoting health. The 3 tala helps balance emotions. The 4 tala, that is 8-4, strengthen and stabilize the body. The 5 tala to enhance metabolism. And the 6 tala to enhance the oxygenation in the brain. Now, in those days, they use certain terms, and that is why we have to understand the context when Swamiji says some things, because he actually says here, if I were to read exactly what he says it helps to send excess oxygen to the brain. Now, in those days, there were terms like this were used. Nowadays, we understand it's not excess oxygen, but it's just normalizing the oxygen saturation. So here, what is very important is that It is not that you are sending more than normal, but most people are getting less than normal. I hope you are getting my message. Huh? It is very, very important that we have this message in mind. The message is that you are not going beyond normal, but because people are subnormal, you are helping them become normal. Because most people are not normal, they are already subnormal. These cells are not receiving the oxygen they need and in the way they require it. So two things is, quantitative is the amount, qualitative is the way they need it. So both quantitatively and qualitatively, our cells are oxygen starved. Now, as a doctor, it is very dangerous to say this because most of the time, if you look at the saturation, you will find 95, 96, 97. This is a common saturation. 95 is the common number for saturation. But then, recently we had one of our clients, an older woman who had fibrosis of the lungs. This is way beyond COVID, so it's not COVID fibrosis. It was maybe about 6 months ago. And her saturation levels were in the 80s. Now that is really bad. It means that you cannot get out of bed without feeling breathless. You cannot walk from your bed to the bathroom without feeling breathless. That is the state quantitatively. So quantitatively it's about 80. Qualitatively it has impacted her quality of life in limiting her every action, where instead of saying I want to do that, she has to say, will it make me dyspneic? Will it make me have difficulty in breathing? And it is very interesting because this was a client that Dr. Meena was giving some home sessions, and we started monitoring because this lady luckily had one of those pulse oximeters at home to monitor it. And it was so amazing to see how the regular practice of yoga with, especially, she couldn't do too much because everything she did made her breathless. So it was a very, very slow and steady process, and how that oxygen saturation came up into the mid 90s from the low 80s. Very great transformation that changed her whole thinking. She no longer had to think in terms of whether it would make her breathless, but in terms of whether she wanted to do it or not, that's all. So when Swamiji has used this term, excess oxygen, we must re-evaluate that term in the modern context. Because in those days, there was a lot of this. It's like people used to say you do the abdominal pressure postures and there will be more insulin because the pancreas is squeezed. That is not really true totally. Because what is actually happening is the insulin resistance in the body goes down. So cells become more sensitive to the insulin in the blood. Rather than more insulin, it is enhancing the insulin sensitivity of the cell. Same way here, maybe we are enhancing the oxygen sensitivity of the cell. Maybe that is actually what is happening. And this is in the rhythm, which is now, Swamiji is talking about the 6th tala, which is basically 12-6. Okay, so the 12-6 is where you are actually making your body more oxygen efficient. You cannot talk about oxygen without carbon dioxide because you need one and you expel the other out. So it's better the gaseous exchange is becoming fine-tuned. Coming back to 12-6, otherwise we're going to end up this whole session without me even telling you one of the ratios today, which is common with my Yoga Sutras. And many of you have suggested I have online sessions on Yoga Sutras. You don't know what you're actually suggesting. You really don't know it unless you have done 6 months in the ashram and been in my sessions on the Yoga Sutra. You may have a whole 2-hour session without even one sutra getting discussed. And so watch out. Oh, sorry, that watch out is the gangster yogi one. Identity crisis between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Okay. 12-6, Swamiji says, the mind is awakened by a pranic flow and alertness and clearness of the senses is noted. It's amazing actually the way he the way he mentions this. The mind is awakened by a pranic flow. This is not just physical and physiological. See, when we talk about oxygen, we are talking about something which is physiological. It's at a molecular level. Swamiji is actually using a term for 12.6. He says, the mind is awakened. Because most of us are in a state of mind. That mind level, if I could call it a level, is at the mud level, M-U-D. And that is called mudha. Mudha. Mud. Huh? In Tamil, we use a word mundam, which means a stupid idiot. Where somebody's mind is so dull. The tamasika of the tamasika. Right? Tamasika of tamasika. That is the level at which people are. It's called mudha. The mind is so dull, it's like clay that has not been molded into anything. Now that mind has to be activated. You need prana, you need life energy moving through it. If that mind is to move from mudha into kshipta, vikshipta, then become ekagrata, which is capable of one-pointed concentration and focus, and then go into the state of meditation through that focus. And then you start to have niruddha. So many people, Dr. Ananda, I don't have time. Can you teach me meditation? I'm like, do you realize what meditation is? Huh? They think just closing your eyes and, I don't know, thinking of anything is meditation. That is only, I don't even know what term to use for it. Huh? Gangster yogi will find a term for that, not Dr. Ananda. The mind is awakened by a pranic flow, and alertness and clearness of the senses is noticed. See, what happens is our senses are actually below the mind. The yogic concept of the senses is you have these 5 senses and then you have the mind. Quiet sitting, contemplative sitting. I rather than use the word meditation, I like to use the word contemplation, quiet contemplation. Because that is good. It is very, very good. Quiet contemplation is a very good word, and it is good to do it. I am not against people doing it. I am against people thinking that is dhyana. That is where my problem comes. And whenever people talk about yoga and meditation, now you got me onto that. Okay. Yoga and meditation. Meditation or dhyana is part of yoga. It's not separate. I thought that was bad. And then I now started having yoga and pranayama. God, forgive them. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they are doing. Yoga and pranayama. May I remind you, pranayama is an integral component of yoga, abhyasa, yoga sadhana. Anyway, so the mind needs to get fit for it. It is so amazing that we need to have that mind that is fit for it. That is why pranayama enables the mind, dharana sucha yogyata manasaha. The mind becomes fit for meditation and so concentration. You first of all have to get your mind fit for concentration, let alone meditation. Dharana is the first one. And people's mind, the common mind, is in mudha. And that is why the 12.6 Swamiji says, the mind is awakened by a pranic flow. What is prana? Life. So the dull, inert, lifeless mind or no mind is being awakened through the flow of the prana, and the senses are below it. So you have the senses associated with the spinal centers. The senses are below the mind. Mind is considered manas. Is considered the 6th of the senses. So you have the 5 and a super sense called the mind. So even the senses are dulled in most people. And that is what Swamiji is saying here. He says, this is good for impaired sight, hearing, etc. He said, our senses are also dulled because the mind energy is not flowing through the sense. The senses are like your computer. It's like your iPad. It's like your mobile. It's like your electronic equipment. That is what the senses are. And they are all the electrical equipments are modeled on the sensory model. When we want to understand the working of the eyes, we use the model of the camera. But do you realize the camera was modeled on the eye, not the eye on the camera? So the sensory apparatus is like your equipment. But if the equipment doesn't have an energy source, yesterday in the morning after my session, I didn't realize I had not charged my mobile. And so when I got into the car to go to work, I found that my mobile was 1% charge. 1%, which means just one away from being dead. When you say your battery has gone dead, your equipment is flat, it's not working. What it means is there's no energy. The energy is not flowing through it. The senses are like that. When the energy of the mind is not flowing through the sense properly, the sense is not going to be functional at its optimal level. So a suboptimal level of sensory function is because of the impaired mind force working through it. And what is the mind force related to? The pranic force. Yato mana tata prana. The mind and the prana go together. Similarly, how the mind goes, well, that is where the prana flows. So, one is that how the prana, how the breath goes affects the mind. Chale bate, chale chittam is how the Hatha Yoga texts tell us. So, how the breath goes affects the mind. And that is why the yogis said, if you want to regulate the mind, regulate the breath. And that is why, again, pranayama as the preparation for the introspectional aspect, starting with one-pointed concentration. Dharana sucha yogyata manasaha. Who said it? Patanjali. What did he say? Everything. When did he say? God knows. Is it applicable today? Yes. Will it be applicable tomorrow? Yes. Will it be applicable 2000 years from now? Yes. Was it applicable 2000 years ago? Yes. Why? He is a time traveler. He is from the future. And he went back into the past to give us this. We have to nourish the soil and the food will be abundant. Yes, Gargi. Perfectly true. And what we are thinking is that we want abundant food without nourishing the soil. We want a quick fix. And that is why fast food, fast life, fast wife, fast mind, fast breath, everything fast. And fast death. Yoga is like slow food. It's slow. And that is why if you have fast, watch out. Gets you there fast. You know where? Yamaraja. So the mind is awakened by a pranic flow, and alertness and clearness of the senses is noted. The senses start to operate as they are meant to. Good for impaired sight and hearing. Swamiji then goes on to say, what would be the bigger picture? He says, the student, the sadhaka, wishing to develop a good retentive memory. If you want good memory, you have to have good concentration. To have good concentration, you have to be able to pay attention. To pay attention, you need focus. To focus well, you need breath. It's all linked. The student wishing to develop a good retentive memory and clearness of thought, clarity of thought, should perfect this technique 12-6-12-6. So 12-6-12-6 is an excellent practice in order to fine-tune the mind. To fine-tune the mental functioning. And remember, yoga is all about the mind. People have got it totally mixed up when they think yoga is about the body. Yoga is all about the mind. Yogena chittasya is how the Vyasa Bhashya tells us that Patanjali, he has given us yoga for the mind. Yogena chittasya. And Patanjali also, yoga hai chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta vritti is the whole concept on which it is based. And that is why this concept about whether it's good for your gluteus maximus or gluteus medius, which basically gives you what in North America would be called a yoga butt. But yoga is not done for a yoga butt. That sounds a bit like, you know who. I'm getting a bit addicted to this alter ego of mine. I have to watch out. So 12-6-12-6. Let's do a few rounds of this And before I do that, and yesterday I had a question about the time, and I will just deal with it very briefly here. That when we are counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, what happens is that this may be less or more than our time count of seconds. And seconds are only a human made concept of what time is divided into. So seconds are not really the key. One way to look at this would be to look at your heart rate. And if you can monitor your heart, last night in the hospital, I was seeing when you have a pulse oximeter, it gives you the heart rate and there's a beep. So, you have a beep, 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 which then the speed of the beep lets you know how fast the heart rate is. So one thing would be to have one of these things and it tells you the beep, and then that beep you use as your count for your pranayama. So you are personalizing the time frame to your own biological rhythm. It would be actually a very beautiful way to do it, where you are actually using your biological rhythm or looking for a pulse and going with that pulse. So that pulse, which basically is about 0.8 seconds. 0.8 seconds is a normal cardiac cycle. It's not really a normal cardiac cycle. What is normal? Don't get me going on that. That's 2.5 hours. The cardiac cycle, for the sake of understanding, is considered as 75 beats per minute. So 75 in 60 seconds. So 60 divided by 75 gives you 0.08. So they say all the events in one cycle, it's a cardiac cycle, occur in 0.8 seconds if your heart rate is 75. Now, if your heart rate was 60, it is 60 by 60, so 1 second for each cardiac cycle. So if your heart rate was 60, your heart, the beat would be basically 1 per second. Otherwise, it is slightly faster than that. So this would be a good guide as an individualized, personalized time scale. The other one would be to use a mantra. So if you are doing, say, a 6 count, you have the Sharavana Bhava, Sharavana Bhava. That is one way to use it. If you are doing the Namah Shivaya for the 5, Namo Narayanaya, the 8, Namo Narayanaya, it usually has the Om. Om Namo Narayanaya as the Ashta Akshara, the 8-syllabled mantra. Pancha Akshara for Shiva, the 5-syllable. Shadakshara, the 6 syllables for Lord Muruga, Subramanya, Sharavana Baba. These could be also used. If you have a rhythmic pattern, because I have also studied the Mridangam, we have different rhythms, so we can use that. So I can, ta, ka, de, me is 4. Ta, ki, ta is 3. Ta, ka, ta, ki, ta is 5. These become patterns with which you can work. So it is not that it has to be exactly 1 second per count. It would vary a bit. And again, one needs to work with one's own rhythm. Ultimately, the aim is about harmonizing with yourself, not somebody else. It's about you being you, okay? So let's do a 12-6 for a few rounds before we close for this morning and then go in for the synchronized global prayer. Breathing out. Breathing in. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold. That's all. 2. Okay. Sorry for that, but it's okay. It's a bit more difficult for people who are not used to this count. So this is the count you are using: 12, 6, 12, 6. And we'll continue our exploration over the next few days of the Savitri pranayama. Savitri, related to the solar energy, reconnecting ourselves as a solar being to the solar system in which we live, recharging our solar cells. That is the life energy, so that the prana can flow as it should. See you all back in a few minutes on my personal account for the synchronized global prayer, the Vishwa Yoga Pratana. Namaste.